Welcome back. Now, this weekend, we've seen yet another volunteer worker brought from Africa to a Western country. This time, it's to the UK. We're concerned about what's happening to our biosecurity protocols. Are they deliberately being stood down? So we wanted to talk to someone who is an expert. Dr. Richard Davis has a company that is actually developing an Ebola cure. So he's very familiar with the protocols, the level 4 security protocols that should be handled around this type of disease. He is a founder of 5 successful companies, 2 of which have gone public. He's a physician, inventor, and successful serial entrepreneur who has authored over 400 patents and trademarks worldwide. Joining us now is Dr. Richard Davis. Well, Dr. Davis, I wanted to talk to you about a number of things. I want to talk to you about the way that we see people increasingly being brought into Western countries for treatment rather than being treated there, the kind of containment and biosecurity issues that raises. But you contacted us and told us that you had within your company some spectacular results treating Ebola before this outbreak occurred. You had a product called RC2 Beta. You said you were working with the U.S. Army at Fort Detrick. Over the past year, you had killed Ebola and a number of other deadly viruses in a way that had never occurred before, that was entirely non-toxic to surrounding normal uninfected cells, according to your email. So I want to talk to you about that. But before we get to that, let's talk about these cases of people coming to the United States. We just had in England, in the UK, they just had a British Ebola patient arrive this last weekend for treatment. I thought it was kind of interesting that they said the patient is currently not seriously unwell, and yet in the pictures that we're looking at here, you can see them rolling his bed around with plastic on it, but you also see people that are in the vicinity of this patient that don't seem to have much, if any, protective clothing on it. What are we seeing here as they're bringing people in? Are they following the biosecurity methods, or are they just ignoring them?
Well, I think that's a great question, and thank you for having me on, David. It's a pleasure. My experience goes back to my days in the Navy, where I received a significant amount of nuclear, biological, and chemical training as part of my being part of a readiness command. And I think that my understanding at that time, and I don't think it's changed since, that we wouldn't have done it this way. Mm-hmm. Patients that have these kinds of very, very deadly and potentially very contagious infections would be treated in a way that would be vastly different. I think that at a very minimum, if the idea, and I don't understand the rationale for bringing these people out of country as opposed to bringing the drugs in, which would have been the most conservative approach. But if you had a compelling reason to get these people out of country, there are a number of level 3 portable and mobile containment facilities that are readily available that could be put on board ships so that the contagion could be limited to just shipboard personnel. It could be much easier to isolate those people, and it might be a better step as opposed to bringing them into very populated areas where I do not know if the Emory facility is a level 4. I just don't know. Mm-hmm. I've done a lot of reading, and I can't find what the level of that facility is.
Let me get your response to this. As somebody who obviously has worked with Ebola, you know what the procedures and protocols are. I came across an article that I found very disturbing. It was from a site called birdflu666.wordpress.com, but they seem to be very knowledgeable about these regulations. They say that the CDC director, Dr. Thomas Friedman, would know about level 4 regulations because he testified before Congress about the anthrax issues that were involved with that. But they say that he basically has just flouted these regulations. They're calling on him to be fired. Some of the things that they pointed out, they said it isn't encouraging to see this doctor who was brought back, Dr. Brantley, who's now cured, fortunately. But they say that he was seen walking around in a hazmat suit when this first began. Said it's shocking to see him without air-supplied, positive pressure personnel suit with a helmet that's mandated by biolevel 4 security regulations to prevent the virus from spreading through the air and to others around him. It was also shocking to see him transported in an ordinary ambulance to the hospital. And they point out that at this hospital, he was treated on the ground floor, even though in Africa, where they had the center of this outbreak, they had a separate facility for these kind of hemorrhagic fevers. They didn't keep it in the same hospital building where they were treating other patients, yet he's brought into the ground floor of a hospital there. Could you comment on that?
Well, I think that they're mistaken about that.
Okay.
In the sense that the hazmat suits with the positive pressure are meant to prevent you from becoming infected. They're meant to keep things from the outer world from getting to you. If you're already infected and you put yourself under positive pressure, you would simply be pushing the virus out into the surrounding area.
Oh, okay.
So I can understand why they didn't provide a positive pressure, but they did provide a fully contained hazmat suit for his brief transportation between the vehicle and the containment facility of whatever degree it might happen to be. So I would actually agree with that. My concern is, why bring him to a very populated place in the first place?
Yes.
I simply don't understand what the compelling reason for doing that. There may be one. I simply am not aware of what that might be.
It seems like it would be far easier to send the treatment to them. Now, I did see some information that he did receive, of course, the ZMapp vaccine in country. Perhaps do you believe that he was brought here after he had responded favorably to that, where they believe that he was not as contagious, perhaps, or in later stages of recovery? Do you know anything about that?
I don't have any information about that. I'm just delighted that he recovered.
Yes.
And that the ZMapp technology worked as advertised, because it was apparently the first time that it had ever been used in humans. It had been obviously used in non-human primates before with success. So I'm delighted that there is a technology out there for this disease. I just think that there may be some potential limitations to its ultimate use. Because it is a biological, it requires a lot of steps, a tremendous amount of purification and other things, which, although they have become increasingly routine, you wouldn't think that a vaccine of this nature would ever be considered anything like being routine.
Yes. Now, we're almost out of time. We've got a couple of minutes left. Now, I wanted to get on to your treatment and kind of compare it to the ZMapp treatment. The ZMapp treatment, as I read about how it works, concerns me on a number of levels. First, they give the disease to some mice. Then as they develop antibodies, they genetically modify those. Then they put them in a genetically modified tobacco plant to grow them. Then they take the plantibodies that come out of that GMO tobacco and inject that into people. In a sense, basically already having the antibodies created so that you don't have to create them in your own body. So instead of injecting you with a weakened or dead form of the disease, they directly inject what they call plantibodies. And you had some spectacular results, as you pointed out in your email. Tell us what happened as you were working with the Army at Fort Detrick. You were doing tests there, and they were seeing the results. And yet, as this outbreak was happening in Africa, basically it went silent. Is that correct?
That's correct. I think that the results that we had were in tissue culture. We had not yet advanced to animal studies, although the drug has been used by the company that we acquired this technology from. They had actually had some experience in both horses and man in the use of this drug for different indications. So the drug has been tried, but in uncontrolled trials, which would have to be considered anecdotal by any scientific perspective. But at least the data is there. There was some experience. And the fact is that when we provided this with the Army, they tested it against a number of different viruses from a number of different viral families. And the results were spectacular. With increasing dose, we were approaching 100% kill in Ebola, with 100% kill of Marburg virus, Rift Valley fever, Venezuelan equine encephalitis. And we've seen in other treatments, in other disease indications at other research facilities, its effectiveness against a number of different viral targets.
We're out of time, Dr. Davis. I certainly hope that your research continues, because I'm very concerned about the complexity, the mechanisms, and the possible adverse side effects of this GMO vaccine, ZMapp, and whether it might be mandated for the general population. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your research.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Well, of course, my concern is that these people are being brought back, our protocols are being violated, because they want to create a PR campaign of panic and then show them as being cured, so they can then roll out a massive mandatory campaign of vaccinations using these kinds of genetically modified vaccines. We know that it's cured this one doctor and also the assistant that was with him, who was brought back, Dr. Brantley. But what are the long-term consequences of this, and what are they going to add to it once they start mass producing it like they do other vaccines? Well, stay with us because we're going to continue to cover this as it develops. And if you're a Prison Planet TV subscriber, we'll keep you updated. It's something that you can share with up to 11 other people simultaneously. It helps to support our operation here. And you can also share with those people all the documentaries of Alex Jones. Well, that's it for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern.
I began to get into iodine a few years ago because it was helping me and my family so much get healthy and detoxify. I believe our research is conclusive. This is the best iodine out there. And I know this for a fact. Nobody else has got iodine based on these pure crystals, ladies and gentlemen. For a limited time, experience the ancient power of Survival Shield X2. Take advantage of this unprecedented 30% off Super Detox Special at InfoWarsLife.com.
You are watching the InfoWars Nightly News, which airs 7 p.m. Central at InfoWarsNews.com. Members can share their passcodes with up to 11 other people, and your support is helping us defend liberty worldwide.